start.
All right, so I'm going over Java annotations. It's the next step in the Java trails. Annotations just provide some data about the program while not being a part of the actual program itself. Annotations don't actually don't affect the operation of the code they annotate. They're kind of used by the compiler to help detect errors or suppress warnings. And some are available to be examined at runtime, but not all of them. So the main ones are these three, the ones that Java provides, and it's deprecated, override, and suppress warnings. Override's kind of the main one I think everybody here has probably seen before. Is you have to override stuff that you didn't want the parent method, so you have to override it to get your own method. Deprecated's another one, so when a method is, since you don't want to use this method anymore, but you don't want to completely get rid of it because other programs or other applications may still use the method, you just want to mark it as deprecated, then it'll let anybody know who's using the method that they should be using or upgrading to the newer one. And then suppress warnings is a way of kind of overriding the deprecated, so that way it doesn't give you a warning. But there's also an unchecked warning that you can suppress as well. So actually getting into where it's used and how it's used, I made this kind of quick little test class, warrior class. So they just have a name, a level, HP, the constructor, which just takes in a name and assigns base stuff, level up, a damage dealing method, and a way of just getting back the name. And then just a quick main method to print out the player's name or the player, and also print out a little do damage thing. But the way this is set up originally, it's inheriting the toString method from object, which gives this terrible test warrior and then the hash code of the entire class. So the first way to get around that is to do to override the toString method that it's inheriting. So that way it's printing out whatever we want instead of what object said we should print out. And doing that changed the toString of it from this terrible test.warrior at that hash code to this nice exactly saying out what the class is and what all is going on with the class. And then let's say that we don't like the swing method that we created. The swing method is just a do 5 times the level plus 25. It's just to set damage all the time. We want a little bit more randomness to it. And so we're going to go ahead and deprecate that old string or the swing method in case anybody's still using it, and create our new do damage method, which does some random damage. Just makes a little bit more sense. But when you do that, the exact same scenario that we had before, we'll throw this little warning that says the swing's been deprecated and you should use the new method. Also, when you deprecate something, you're supposed to also add the Java docs to say what to use instead. That's just kind of normal to do it that way instead of just deprecating it without. But when you actually add the suppress warnings, that error method, that warning goes away completely, so that way it still works. It'll still show that it's crossed out, like that it's deprecated, needs to be updated to the new way of doing things, but won't actually give you that warning anymore.
I have a question. Is there at some point where you would want to delete swing because like it's deprecated, it's just like sitting in there, and I imagine like someone's using like this class, because if you just deleted it immediately and someone's still using swing, they're like, well, where the crap did it go? Like, so the deprecated would be there for a while, but at what point would you want to get rid of it and just like, does that matter? Or?
The trails can go into too much detail with that, but it is good to keep it around for those type of situations. So if somebody's still going to be using it in the future, do you have any insight?
So you actually see it pretty commonly in big libraries where they'll deprecate something. What they'll do is they'll be deprecated in a new release, and they'll say in such and such release, which is expected to be 6 months or 2 years from now, we're going to remove it. So that way you have the dependency to either update it or keep your system using the older version of it.
That makes sense. Yeah, good enough.
And then there's a few other predefined, Java predefined annotations, but I've never actually seen them used. Safe var arg is kind of a check on warnings for or the arguments that are being passed into a class or the main method. Is that correct? I couldn't find exactly for sure, but it looks like if you kind of know a like command line argument's going to be passed in a specific way, you can just override any of the warnings and say, hey, I know it's going to be this way.
Could we have somebody present on variable arguments and methods? A couple weeks ago. Somebody did. It's just you can have any method could have theoretically a variable argument as a system, but same thing basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a way to suppress one.
Then there's a functional interface one, which I wasn't quite sure on. They didn't have too much on the trails on this one, but that's just another Java predefined annotation. And then there's some other annotations, but they're just for they're for annotating annotations, which I'll get into at the end. But you can also declare your own annotation type. So let's say I wanted to have this kind of annotation at the top of all of my code, just saying that the author is this, the date's going to be this. This is kind of a way of saying exactly what the annotation is going to be, and then this is what you would actually be putting above your method, so that way you can provide extra information. Then there's repeating annotations. So let's say you had you created a schedule annotation for creating like when reoccurrence, how often things happen, and that kind of stuff. Here's one of those annotations that are specifically for another annotation that's repeatable. And so this makes it to where this annotation can be created or done multiple times before the actual method is called or declared. Also along the same lines with declaring annotations, there's also some that you get from like packages like JUnit will come with the add test one. So if you've ever done like unit tests, you have to say, hey, this method is going to be a test, and that comes down with those ones. So you can actually download these as well as creating your own. And then there's type annotations. So all the annotations we've been talking about so far is just about like the actual, you throw them above a method or, above a method, just saying, hey, this method I'm calling is going to be overridden, or it's deprecated, or I know I'm going to be doing stuff that that is bad in this method, so I'm going to suppress the warnings on it. But there's type annotations where you can just do right where you declare what type something is, you can do a non-null or that kind of stuff. Java doesn't provide any right now, but there's a few out there that you can download and install the plugins for on your own. University of Washington's kind of a big one with the checker framework. This provide like the null checks, the regex checks, and the mutex modules plus other ones. And kind of how those are declared is this way with the at whatever your annotation is, and then your actual declaring of the variable. That's it on annotations.
Thanks.
Any questions?
So I shouldn't take a bite right before. So next time we should probably have someone cover OSGI annotations. There's some specific annotations we use a lot with our bundles. And they have to do with the OSGI environment. So thanks again, Victor. Let's see if we stop our recording.